Oh, hi, everybody. I'm Ross Gianfortuni. I'm the engagement editor here at GovExec. This is Eric Katz, our senior correspondent. Now, they're voting on the Omnibus now, correct?
Yeah, well, as of Monday or Wednesday afternoon, they're sort of still going through the vote. They're expected to be a lot of Republican defections on this because they're not happy that some of their priorities and President Trump's priorities were not funded through this bill. But Democrats are expected to come through and give them the bill enough of a boost that it will get over the hurdle, send it over to the Senate tomorrow before Trump will presumably sign it for the Friday deadline.
Yeah, I was going to say, so we had this week-long CR. As you mentioned, a lot of Democrats are happier with this than Republicans may be. So who are the big winners?
Yeah, well, it's interesting. You know, Democrats sort of came out and were saying we got everything we wanted. We stopped Republicans from getting most of what they wanted or what the Trump administration wanted. The last few days, the White House has been singing a different tune, saying the Democrats are wrong. I mean, we're glad they're supporting this, but we can't believe that they are because we got so much that we wanted.
Right.
You know, they're talking about how they had major wins in the bill. So there's a lot of spin going on. Objectively, you know, some agencies came out on top. Like you said, there are some big winners. I talked about in my story the Health and Human Services Department getting a big boost. You know, 4% sounds small, but you think about the fact they only have 5 months to spend this. So that's really a big influx of money in a small period of time. A lot of that's going to NIH, $2 billion surge there. So they're big winners in that sense, especially when you consider that Trump proposed that starting in 2018, fiscal 2018, cutting the NIH funding a lot. So Congress took that in a completely different direction. Other departments, such as transportation, came out ahead. Maybe they'll start using that to fund infrastructure projects. We'll have to see. Those were sort of the major winners. Obviously, Homeland Security came out ahead as well. They got a pretty big boost as requested by the Trump administration. That's something that they've been talking about the last couple of days. There's no funding specifically for the border wall.
I was going to say, does this go to the wall, or is this just hiring, or is it? Where do you think it's going?
Well, it's interesting that there's sort of a clause in there that there's no concrete brick and mortar wall as Trump talked about in the campaign trail. Now, what the White House has been saying is that they need time to design it anyway, so it's okay, and that they will be able to move forward with sort of advanced fencing, you know, levee walls along, you know, parts that
blimps
that line up with the river. Yeah, and then also technology, like you're talking about, and then, you know, sort of heavy-duty fencing that will allow Border Patrol to see through to the other side, which oddly OMB Director Mick Mulvaney said yesterday is better than a wall. It's sort of mixed messaging on that front.
Was he talking chain link? I saw we've seen some of the photos of
right. Well, what they're saying is they're going to get rid of chain link and replace it with sort of more heavy-duty fencing with like pillars and not complete wall. It depends how you define it. What is a wall? The whole press briefing today was a lesson from Sean Spicer about what is a wall and what isn't.
Yikes.
And so, yeah, there's a lot of semantics, obviously. End of the day, Homeland Security, if this bill is approved and signed, as is expected, would get big funding boost. Trump has, as we've talked about on, I believe, this Facebook Live before, he wants huge hiring surge at DHS, especially ICE and CBP. They actually cut spending for CBP hiring in this bill because CBP said we can't hire as fast as we were expecting anyway. You know,
yeah, it's not easy, is it?
They have a lot of restrictions on how they can hire, and recruiting has been a big problem for them. Getting people through the process, including lie detector tests, has been a big problem for them. So right now that process isn't going as quickly as they had hoped, and therefore they're not getting funded for it. ICE would get a small boost in hiring. They get a big, I think, something like a 9% funding increase. Only a small part of that would go towards hiring. Drop in the water compared to what Trump is instructing them to hire. So DHS overall, another big winner in the funding plan. Defense Department gets a boost. That's sort of going towards, that's usual. Another thing that Trump is highlighting as a victory for him, because he asked for it. It's not as big as the boost he wanted, but will help go toward increasing the warfighting efforts against ISIS in the Middle East.
So who were the big losers then on the other side?
On the other side, some agencies, most of these cuts were relatively minor, especially when compared to what Trump is expecting in the future or proposing in the future. But like I said, 5 months to sort of absorb these cuts makes them a little harder to sort through for these agencies. We had EPA as one of our losers. Their cut is actually not that huge compared to what Trump has proposed, but sort of a step in the direction of what is anticipated there. The General Services Administration would take a big hit under this bill. That would go towards sort of constructing fewer new buildings, mostly, is how the.
Although, as we've reported, they have plenty of excess property.
Right. So that's sort of probably factored into the thinking there. Several other agencies would take a smallish hit, a couple percent. We'll have to see if they run into difficulties enforcing that.
Okay, so the Trump administration says they got what they wanted for the most part. Then, the bill was put together, or the agreement was put together over the weekend, Sunday night, I believe. And then a day and a half later, Trump wants a good shutdown.
Mm-hmm.
How does that inform this vote? How does that inform the budget process going forward? What's going on the president's head when he tweets something like that out?
Well, the last part of that question is something I don't think I or anybody could answer.
Yes. It was more rhetorical than anything else, but yes.
To speculate a little bit, it seems that Democrats really came out strongly in saying we won, they lost in this bill, and the Republicans got their sort of backs up against the wall and said, whoa, we got a lot of stuff too, and right. If you think that this was easy for you, wait till you see September, it won't be so easy. And I think that's sort of factoring into the calculus here. He didn't get the wall funding specifically in this bill. He didn't get the cuts that he wanted specifically in this bill. A couple other things that sort of didn't go his way is, some of the policy riders, as they're referred to, like Planned Parenthood and
Planned Parenthood is funded.
Planned Parenthood is funded. So House leaders have said we should deal with that separately. So now Trump is saying, well, this bill would fund government through September, so that would create a whole nother round of negotiations in a few months as they work toward the 2018 budget, which begins October 1st. And Trump really has his heart set on getting these priorities funded at that time. And seems to be setting an early line in the sand. If you don't do it, I'm willing to shut down the government. Democrats, he will likely need to be on board with this. Definitely in the Senate, there's a 60-vote threshold. Democrats are needed to pass that threshold. And they said that anything that involves a brick and mortar, concrete wall is a non-starter, probably several other things that could go into that, such as Planned Parenthood, other immigration provisions, Wall Street regulation provisions that could disrupt that. So we'll have to see how these negotiations unfold over the next few months, and if either side is willing to back down from their posturing as of now, which sort of seems to lead us in the direction of a shutdown.
In September.
In September, now very optimistic on all sides that come Friday, government will be funded, no shutdown. But 5 months from now, could be a different story.
It's an improvement over the last few years, I will say that, but where we're going 2 weeks or a couple months, but that risk is still I suspect not attractive for anybody in government. So what did Feds say when I know you wrote in your story a little bit about reaction from groups and from Feds in general, people who represent Feds in Congress. What are they saying both to Trump's tweet and to the Omnibus in general?
Well, I think mostly the groups that represent federal employees are happy. They despise shutdowns. It, for obvious reasons, takes away from the livelihoods of federal employees. So they're happy about the Omnibus agreement, both because it avoids the shutdown and doesn't give Trump the cuts that he wanted specifically for this year. He calls for cuts next year, but it also asked for cuts this year, and this doesn't do that. Mm-hmm. So they're happy about that. They're skeptical because they say this is just one small step. We still have fiscal 18 to go, and that's a big question mark, as we just discussed at length.
Yeah, definitely.
As far as Trump's tweet, I think they obviously are not happy about the threat of a shutdown, but for now it's just a threat. So
it's pretty unprecedented, though.
It's odd for the president to advocate a shutdown when there's been shutdowns in the past. The White House, would say, that it was an unfortunate consequence of congressional intransigence or something along those lines, and they look to end it as quickly as possible. There's been sort of spin from the White House since that tweet came out saying that we don't want a shutdown. Shutdown's never a desire to end, but maybe it would help get Democrats in line with what we're asking for. So,
a negotiating tactic,
perhaps. Negotiating tactic, probably. Perhaps a disconnect between the communications team of the White House and the budget director and what the president is, tweeting at any given moment, as we've seen over the last few months. But like I said, for now, it's sort of posturing, and we'll have to see how things progress.
Wow. Well, we should, by the end of this week, have 5 months of government being open, and that's good. And we'll certainly check in many times between now and then. And thanks to everybody for watching, obviously. Thank you, Eric, for joining me.